Hi everyone, today's stories are really amazing, so make sure you listen until the very end. You won't want to miss a single chilling detail. And before we begin, let's hear from you. Drop a comment letting us know where in the universe you're tuning in from. Share your cosmic location with the community, or any thoughts and suggestions regarding stories. And if you're new around here, please subscribe right now and ring that notification bell too, so you'll never miss out on the next scary stories. For my longtime listeners, don't forget to leave a like on this one if you want more stories like these. That simple thumbs up lets me know I should keep the nightmares coming. Alright, the ritual is complete. Get yourself settled in for a hauntingly good time. Dim those lights, turn up that volume, and prepare to be utterly consumed by today's amazing stories. There is a reason why so many people go missing each year and are never heard of again. Despite the resources of entire communities, and in some cases even governments, people still have the tendency to vanish without a trace. Ask yourself, do you really believe that some people just vanish out of thin air? In some cases it does happen, but when you look at the amount of missing people that a country has per year, you should know that there is a reason for it, regardless of what happens to the person, or what kind of behind-the-scenes crimes they commit. The news is all the same. Family man this, or charity giver that. I will tell you up front, most of the people who go missing deserve to go missing. And I can speak confidently about this because I am one of the reasons so many people have gone missing. I am what you call a BHK, which stands for Bounty Hunter Killer. There is a whole community of us that operate on the dark side of the internet. The reason I have the K at the end of my title is because some of the best trackers and hunters don't have the morals to kill the people they find. This has never been a problem for me, and I am quite glad that my conscience can take it. The people who are willing to execute the target get paid significantly more than the ones who plant blackmailable evidence or set up the target for extortion. Oh yes, there are many ways to get rid of a victim once they have had a bounty placed on their head. It is easiest to think of them as prey instead of people. This is because nobody ends up on the hit list unless they have done some unspeakable crime. Most commonly, we have child predators, serial killers, or very high-end drug pushers. But occasionally we have a doctor who sells back alley drugs, or a boss who exploited their employees to the point that they pooled their money together for him to meet his demise. All in a day's work, as I suppose. Though I have numerous stories of my killings, which perhaps one day I will share with you, I am here to talk about the recent one. This happened last winter when I got contacted by my manager. For the sake of anonymity, let's just call him Chuck. Chuck is a certified tech whiz who handles all the details and transactions with my payments. I was skeptical about letting someone in who knows about me and what I do. But in time, I realized it is the smarter move to have a tech guy on your team, especially when dealing with the dark web and murder. Vile, my code name. We got a child rapist and killer, Wichita, Kansas. Track him down, get the location of the bodies, waste him, $20,000. Attached to his message was some pictures of a torture setup, and the body of a woman whose age I am not going to try and guess. Some serial killers really think posting their photos to the dark web is safe. This particular photo had a white male hand and several identifiable items in the background. It appears someone related to one of the victims had been searching that part of the internet in suspicion that she might show up there. Like I said, no one just goes missing. This case would be pretty straightforward. Chuck would analyze the criminal records of white men in Wichita, as well as get the details on the items showing up in the tortured girl's photo. Raid bug spray, a tackle box of lures, in particular largemouth bass, and a few disposable vapes. This would be a cakewalk for Chuck. I'm game. I can be in the area by the weekend. Hack security cameras and see if you can get a car that at one point or another visited a fishing shop, hardware store, and tobacco store. Let me know what you find. I was greeted with a response immediately. Knowing Chuck, this wasn't all that strange. He probably wouldn't have contacted me if he hadn't already found something. Let's just say that Chuck enjoys the hunt as much as I do, just in a different way. 2017, red Hyundai Sonata going in and out of several of the shops. White guy too. License plate is unreadable from the cameras. I can give you all the roads where I lose him. Luckily, he passes tobacco and gifts every time he has movement. I think I can narrow you down to a few neighborhoods. Good luck. Good. Yes, good old Chuck. Any mention details on how the child killer meets his demise? Make him suffer. This is how the conversation ended with me and Chuck. It was at this point that I headed down to my garage where all of my gear is located. It would be a bit of a drive to get to Kansas, so I would get ready early. Since this is the first time I am sharing one of my jobs, I will give you a rundown. In my garage I have a blacked out 2014 SRT Charger, all white with tinted windows. In the trunk I have my usual tools: Milwaukee chainsaw, 2 cases of table salt, Beretta pool silencer, tripod, duffel bag, and most importantly, my Soviet WW2 era bomber jacket that I stole out of a Nazi's collection after he met his demise at my hands. This job was going to be creative though. I went to the back room of my garage and loaded up all the cages I would be needing. After getting everything aligned, I called it a night and got ready for next morning's drive. There are other trivial details that I could fill you in on, but we can skip to the good stuff. The real reason why I am sharing this and why you are reading this. Upon arriving at Tobacco and Gifts, I wasn't forced to play the waiting game long. I saw the red Sonata fairly early and copied down the license plate. It looked like he was heading back to the house or apartment where he lived. After getting the details to Chuck, I was game. Guy's name is Marvin. No criminal record, lives alone at... Google Earth shows that his driveway wraps around to a back basement entrance. I thought it would be tricky getting everything unloaded at his house, but I was in luck. After parking in the street, I only had to wait 6 hours until Marvin took a hike and left. This gave me plenty of time to pull my car around back, break into the back door, which did in fact lead to a basement, and unpack my things before returning to my car and moving it out of sight. Once that was all done, it was going to be the waiting game. I was able to get familiar with the surrounding of Marvin's basement and torture chamber. Except this time it would be him. Rundown pornography posters hung from the walls. There was a strong smell of musty cigar smoke. I thought this guy was supposed to be a vapor. The rest of the room consisted of trash, except one thing. There was a blood-stained table bolted to the floor with chains. This was the place where the woman's photos ended up on the dark web had met her fate. Alas, she will be avenged. I'll tell you this. Marvin was a bitch. When we walked downstairs face first into the end of my Beretta, he pissed himself and broke down. I didn't need to lecture him very long for him to lay on his table. Look, Marvin, I am not going to hurt you. I know what you did, and no police get involved if you do what I say. I need you on the table and chained so you don't try anything. No, I promise I won't hurt you. This wasn't entirely a lie. I wasn't going to be the one to hurt him. Once Marvin was thoroughly chained up, I opened up my duffel bag and tied 4 tunicates around each of his limbs. Next, I opened up the tripod and began to record. Lastly, I went to the cages in the corner that had my bomber jacket over them and brought them over to the table. 4 cages total. In the first cage is the infamous Arizona bark scorpion. I got it as a pet from an ex-girlfriend who ironically knew I loved researching arachnids. In the second cage is my Brazilian wandering spider. This one was actually tough to get, but I had a connection in Colombia I met from the deep web who dealt with exotic animals. In the third cage, the most boring in my opinion, is my pet rattlesnake, Eastern Diamondback to be more specific. I call him Salty. And in the fourth cage is the non-lethal giant desert centipede. I will be honest with you. The thing scares the shit out of me. Even now I am a little wigged out that I have it in my house. Marvin at this point gets the gist of what is about to happen. He can't scream or cry because of the gag in his mouth, but the eyes say enough. I double-check the camera, make sure the tunicates are nice and tight, then begin. I put on Rapika gloves and grab Sally first. I bring her over to old Marvin's right foot and get her all riled up. When she starts getting snappy, I let her sink her fangs into Marvin's Achilles tendon. I should mention that his feet and hands are white from lack of blood at this point, but his reaction says it all. I let Sally get a few more bites into his foot before I return her to her cage. Bark scorpion time. This one is simple because you just need to hold it by the stinger and stick it where you want. This one goes right into the whiteness of the bottom of his foot. Spider time. As I carefully pick up the wandering spider, it bites my gloved hand a few times. This is a bit of a bummer because I want her to save all of her venom for Marvin's right wrist. Either way, she gets a good few bites in that I think did the job. Lastly, we have a centipede. Now I have to admit, I wasn't going to be picking the thing up if I didn't have to. Marvin at this point was almost passed out, so before bringing him back to full consciousness, I untied his hand and stuck it into the centipede's terrarium. After viciously attacking the hand, Marvin got all antsy and started fighting with me. It did him no good. All right now, Marvin, on the count of 3. I grabbed all 4 loose ends of the turn axe and smiled at the camera. 1, 2, 3, snap. All at once, 4 different types of venom, 3 lethal, shot into Marvin's bloodstream. I walked over to the camera and got his reaction. Realistically, only the first 10 minutes were entertaining. Back and forth, Marvin twitched at his spine like he was stretching to do gymnastics. He was fighting his restraints, biting at his lips and making a kind of screeching noise. Marvin took a while to kick the can. When I walked out of that basement to fetch the car, it was now daylight. I sent Chuck a quick message. "Oh my, that boy is dead," he responded. "Money in that bank." Fast forward again and Marvin didn't even make the news. His death was completely unremarkable to public attention, something that you find out all about when you are in this field long enough. Some people dying just doesn't bother anyone. No one cares. And even if they did run his strange deaths, no one would remember after a few days. At least none that didn't know him. I had also completely forgotten to get the girls' burial locations. Oh well. You see, I don't do this for justice. I don't even do this for a paycheck. I do this job because I am completely vile and my bloodlust just can't be contained. Even though this is just my first murder I am sharing with you, there are a few lessons to be taken away from this. 1, I am a total psychopath. 2, I make my victims' pain sharp and deep. And 3, feel free to commit crimes and fuck people over. Just make sure that you do not end up on my list of potential bounties. I must say that I am surprised by the amount of people who are interested in my choice of career. I have seen a wide range of comments asking me, "Is this real?" or "Will you write about your other bounties?" Let's just say that I completely understand the curiosity, and everyone who asked for more is in luck. I have been a dark web bounty hunter for many years, and as you can imagine, that comes with numerous stories. As flattered as I am with the positive feedback, I must mention that the story of old Marvin was actually mild compared to what I have done to some of my victims. As everyone who has kept up to date knows, I only target people who deserve it. There are some truly heinous people in the world. Most of these people live perfectly normal lives. Perhaps one of them is your friend. Perhaps it is your boss. In some cases, it may even be a family member. Regardless, if the crime they have committed lands them on my list, I will happily be their judge, jury, and executioner. I understand this isn't everyone's cup of tea. Vigilante work is something that society very much frowns upon, and I can humbly understand your position. But this line of work is how I put food on the table, and I happen to be very good at it. As you can imagine, most of the people I take care of have, in some way or another, taken food off someone else's table, or in many cases, robbed them of the ability to sit at a table. If someone is willing to kill, extort, or rape another person, I think they're fair game. With that out of the way, I will share a bounty that I did a few years ago. Before I begin, if you are sensitive to topics such as sexual assault and rape, please do not continue reading, as this particular person who ended up on my list was a grade A piece of shit. I should also mention that my actions with this person in particular were extremely vile. I will understand if you, the reader, think less of me after reading what I did that day. Seeing what this guy did brought something out of me that I have never felt before. For this reason, viewer discretion is advised. It was April 2020, in the middle of the pandemic. I got an encrypted doc emailed to me from my usual informant, Chuck. If you missed my first post, you know that Chuck is my partner manager. He is a technologically genius, and like myself, he has nerves of steel. He and I work together in unison. He finds the information of the people on the list of dark web bounties, and I do the executing. Afterwards, we each walk away with a lot of money. Appears we have a child rapist killer, south of West Point, Mississippi. A guy who works as a mechanic. He thought he was anonymously posting to the dark web bounty list. He calls his client Avion. Does not have a real name for the guy, and he only gets payments from him in cash. He thinks Avion has something to do with a few high school girl disappearances, one each from Tupelo, West Point, Starkville, and one as far as Vicksburg. Apparently, when working on Avion's truck, he noticed a few bloody condoms and scraps of notebook paper labeled with one of the missing girls' names on it. all stuffed into a Waffle House bag in the toolbox, sealed into the back of the truck bed. He was poking around in the truck bed toolbox. He thinks he found the reason why these girls disappeared. Unfortunately, the mechanic, let's call him Wes, can't offer a lot of money, but being a Deep South Bible Belt type, he thinks if this guy is guilty, the matter should be placed into our hands instead of the police. Gotta say, I admire that mindset. Let me know what you think, Chuck. I weighed the risks and rewards in my head. It wasn't going to be a big payday, but do I not have a moral obligation to destroy someone like Avian? Bloody condoms and a piece of paper with a missing girl's name on it does not automatically mean he is guilty. I decide to let Chuck do his thing before agreeing. I typed back on the encrypted document, knowing that Wes is the guy who reported this, and that he actually knows Avian makes this easier. But I need a lot more concrete proof that this guy is the reason for the girl's disappearance if I am going to go to Mississippi and annihilate him. Before I hit send, I get a mental image of what this Avian guy might look like. I picture a muscle-bound lumberjack type who thinks he is an absolute badass. The picture of a wannabe tough guy my mind conjured up makes me hate him even more. You want to play that game, Avian? I will swallow your fucking soul and force your mother to bathe naked in your blood. I calm myself down and shake the image my mind created of this guy. I hit send on my message to Chuck and quickly type another. See if you can get in contact with Wes. Check license plates, street cameras, and the whereabouts of Avian. If everything checks out, give Wes a discount and I will demise old Avian with a tire iron dipped in glue, glass, and salt. I hit send. I didn't hear back from Chuck right away, which didn't surprise me considering we weren't going to be making a ton of money off this bounty. In the meantime, I went on with my usual schedule, feeding the arachnids and Salty the rattlesnake, getting old blood in the Dodge Charger floor mats washed out, and fighting the urge to murderously beat the shit out of my punching bag with a Louisville baseball bat, something I have unsuccessfully been trying to stop doing. Face it, the whole world was shut down. There wasn't much else for me to do. A whole week went by before I heard back from Chuck. I didn't bother reaching out to him about the Avian bounty. I wasn't willing to risk being disappointed to the point of attacking my neighbor's lawn hedges with a sickle, something I have unsuccessfully been trying to stop doing. The encrypted message Chuck had sent said, I reached out to Wes. Nearly gave him a heart attack when he heard I found out he was the one who had posted to the dark web. He really thought he was anonymous, LOL. Anyway, we got some interesting stuff. Avian drives a modified 1950s Studebaker truck. You would think that he would be a bit more discreet if he is out kidnapping teenage girls. No address or official name that Wes can give. This guy apparently only goes by Avian and uses cash payments. Wes did give me some other information, once I agreed to help him actually make his postings on the dark web anonymously. Avian runs with the Aryan Brotherhood. H looks like he is some big-shot neo-Nazi. That's probably why every payment is in cash. It is also why Wes wouldn't confront him about the bloody condoms. That, and also Avian would have known that Wes had been snooping. Furthermore, he can be linked to the disappearance of one of these girls. The Studebaker happened to be at a Vicksburg car meet 3 days before the police report of that missing teen went live. Could be a coincidence, but at this point, does it matter? Why don't you bag yourself a neo-Nazi? Hit me back, Chuck. My reply was, well done. I still need to know potential locations. No point in asking if this is a hunt-to-kill job. I hit send. Chuck replied instantly to the encrypted document. No set location, but we have a lead. Wes still has the truck, and it's not getting picked up for another week. He agreed to let you camp out there and wait for Avian to pick up his wheels. From that point, you can follow him to his destination, or take him out on the road. It's a pretty desolate area surrounded by forest. Also about the payment, Wes can give us $300, a signed Conor McGregor UFC glove, and an authentic Corgi model Batmobile he bought on eBay from a guy named Minty Mint. I actually had to hustle him into giving the Batmobile. Is this payment adequate? I replied, I want the McGregor signature. You take the $300 and Minty Mint's possibly authentic Batmobile. Send me Wes's shop location. I don't see a point in adding the details about packing my gear or the drive. You will see shortly how everything plays. The drive itself was uneventful. Upon reaching Wes's auto shop, which is officially named Wes's Auto Shop, I was greeted by an old man with shoulder-length silver hair. Apparently Chuck had told him what I was driving because Wes did not seem all that shocked that an SRT-8 pulled up to his shop. As I stepped out with my backpack, Wes said, "Now you know I want no trouble with internet folk, but I am confident in the crimes of this here Avion character. Your technician said you want to wait here for Avion to show up. I don't need a murder, even by someone of your caliber, right here in front of Wes's auto shop. I'm actually not going to be hanging out here. I plan on putting a tracker on his truck and going to his turf. Anyway, the less we say to each other, the better. You mind showing me the truck?" "Yeah, second garage bay, right here." Before I bugged the truck, I needed Wes to take a hike. As much as I was certain that he wasn't rolling with Avion, I have been in positions before when the caller has played innocent and ended up biting me in the ass. "Do you mind leaving me alone with the truck?" Wes didn't say anything, just simply shrugged and left the bay. As feeble and old as he was, I decided I was going to put a microphone underneath his workbench in the front right side of the garage bay. Everything proceeded as expected. I tapped the truck underneath the carpet of the passenger side floor mat, under the rear bumper, and a third under the engine hood. When I was done, Wes gave me the lackluster payment up front. We didn't say much in the way of goodbyes, and I was off. I had made a reservation at a shitty motel that was near the off-ramp of the highway that took me to Wes's auto shop. I checked in under a fake name and paid in cash before going up to my room and setting up a small base camp. Once I checked in with Chuck, I monitored the bugs and microphone that I had set up at the auto shop. At some point, I must have fallen asleep at my laptop because I awoke to a series of loud bangs accompanied by flying glass and wood shards. Shattering plaster and wall insulation clouded my vision as I dove to the floor and pulled out my brand new Smith & Wesson Governor. I heard the loud shriek of 2 or more motorcycle engines blast away as I laid on the floor. The Nazi fuck shot up my motel room and apparently he had friends. After checking myself over, I heard the blare of sirens in the distance. I wasn't planning on sticking around to check if anyone else was hurt. I was far too pissed off to look out for any sad fuck who happened to be staying in the rooms next to me. Instead, I gathered all my shit and made my way to the car. If being shot up wasn't bad enough, the motherfuckers had spray-painted a dark red swastika on the paint of my all-white SRT-8. I suppose being discreet wasn't going to be an option. I wouldn't have time to check for bugs on my own car before the cops and fire department arrived. But I did do a quick scan for any kind of plastic explosive. After being somewhat convinced, I hopped in, fired up the Hemi, and blasted it down the main street. I didn't stop until I reached a remote parking lot of a factory several miles away. As soon as I pulled in, I pulled out my laptop, activated my Wi-Fi hotspot, and sent a distress video call to Chuck. The fucks not only knew I was coming for them, they found my motel and shot the living shit out of my room. "What the fuck went wrong?" I shouted. "Don't look at me, big guy. Everything on the virtual end is secure. It is either Wes who talked or someone followed the out-of-town car leaving his shop." I didn't get to respond before I heard the sound of motorcycle engines roaring in the distance toward me. I told Chuck I've got company, and hung up without another word. It turns out my car was bugged, or they had some sort of lookout following me from the motel. Nonetheless, I was pissed off enough to deal with whatever the fascists were about to throw at me. I jumped into the back seat of the Charger and strapped on a bulletproof vest underneath my Soviet-era bomber jacket. The windows of the Charger are totally blacked out so my attackers would shoot toward the front seats first, but as seen back at the motel, they will probably rain hell down on the whole vehicle. As they pulled into the parking lot, I discreetly climbed out of the back seat on the opposite side of them and laid with my back to the rear wheel. The shots rang out for 15 seconds straight. Broken glass covered me and sliced up my face and neck. Bleeding badly, I waited for a reload gap to check what the situation was. From the brief bit that I saw, 2 bike headlights were shining about 25 yards from my car. Fire rained out into the body of my car, lighting up the entire parking lot. The warm blood fell from my face. I needed to act quick and fast in case they were willing to shoot until the car blew up. Seeing as all of my heavy weaponry was in my trunk, which was undoubtedly sealed shut from the frame damage, and also in the direct line of fire. I needed to rely on the 6 rounds in my governor. Immediately after the next break in the firing, I rolled out from behind the back tire to the gap underneath the car. I squeezed off 3 shots right above one of the motorcycle's headlights. Surprisingly, I heard screams of pain and saw the headlight flicker as the bike dropped down to its side on top of the shooter. This immediately led the second attacker to open fire again, aiming low at the center of the car. I rolled back behind the safety of the hubcap, but I was still nowhere near out of danger. I was still bleeding profusely from the broken glass that had showered me, and I was down to 3 bullets. This became one of those fuck it moments that you sometimes experience in life. You are in the midst of fight or flight, and get exhausted to the point where you are willing to suicide for the other person to die. At the next break, I simply stood up and shot the 3 rounds into the biker. The first shot hit him in the head and he went down with his bike also on top of the other shooter, who was still wailing in pain. The shooter who was still alive was being crushed by 2 bikes and couldn't fight back. I walked over to him, gun pointed, even though I was out of ammo, and checked his condition. He looked at me with hate as blood poured out of his mouth. I asked a simple question. How long has Wes been raping little girls? I don't know anything about raping little girls. The guy who works at Wes's auto shop is named Avion. He said there is only one thing he is scared of, and that's the internet, because the internet is undefeated. I noticed the dead man had a helmet strapped to his bike. Had he been wearing it, the headshot might not have been fatal. This is when the idea occurred to me. While still being crushed by his own bike, I removed the second bike and aligned the exhaust pipe with the wounded man's face. I reached over, untied the helmet, and jammed it onto the wounded attacker's head. From there, I pushed the exhaust pipe right into the helmet visor gap. The bike was still running, and I could see the exhaust fumes burning and suffocating the wounded man. Before he died from inhalation, I wrenched the ungeared accelerator and watched as the exhaust melted my would-be killer's face off. I cranked for around 10 seconds before pulling the bike and exhaust pipe out of the man's helmet. The third-degree burns suffered by the man were quite impressive. I removed the helmet and watched as part of his skin came loose with it. Black soot covered most of his face, but dark orange specks where the skin got completely melted away dotted the blackened areas. Steam was still wafting off of his face. His charred eyelids showed no movement behind them. I didn't need to check his pulse to know that if he wasn't dead from all the damage he took from the exhaust, his gunshot wounds would take care of him eventually. I returned to my car and grabbed what little had survived the shooting. After getting the trunk opened, I grabbed my extra ammunition and removed the license plates. Unfortunately, I was going to have to write my SRT off as a loss. I had a quarter stick of dynamite in the trunk and I lit it and put it in the tip of the gas tank. After a brisk walk, I got onto one of the attacker's bikes, 2017 Harley-Davidson Iron 883, and rode away as my SRT-8 Charger exploded behind me. I was headed back to Wes's auto shop and I knew I wasn't going to be needing any bullets. I had already planned out what was going to happen to old Wes. As I pulled into the shop parking lot, I saw Wes come out of the first garage bay. He probably recognized the sound of the bike I was riding. However, I was not who he was expecting. When he saw me on the bike, he immediately ran back inside the garage bay and closed the door. I dismounted the bike and walked into garage bay 2, which wasn't connected to the first bay but had what I needed. I wheeled the hand-push lawnmower I had noticed during my first visit out into the parking lot and went back in to grab a roll of duct tape from his workbench. I leaned next to the side of garage bay 1's door and lightly knocked. As I moved out to the side of the door, an explosion of twisted metal ripped through the steel door. 2 quick blasts, one preceding the other. The damage done to the door told me this was a 12 gauge and the quick succession of shells told me it was a double barrel. Wes had fired 2 shotgun shells through the garage door where he presumed I was. However, this was expected. He was a cornered old man paranoid of the mean people on the internet. I could hear him trying to reload the shotgun, but it was too late. I leisurely walked up to the massive hole in the door he had made. I took careful aim and fired a shot that grazed the old man in the shoulder. He went down like he himself got hit by a 12 gauge. I made my way through the massive hole in the metal door and approached Wes. After kicking the shotgun away from him, I saw all hope leave his face. I leisurely walked up to the garage door opener, doing the famous Conor McGregor billionaire strut. Opening the door, I walked out and grabbed the lawnmower and brought it right up to Wes. He was screaming and saying something to me, but I was too distracted thinking about whether there would be any UFC fights during the pandemic. I duct taped the mower's safety handle down and cranked the cord until it started up. I carefully set it upside down so that the blades were facing up. Still thinking about other UFC-related topics, I fought off Wes, who was trying to prevent me from taking his boots off. The old man kicked and struggled, but he was just too weak. With his boots off, I took off my Soviet-era bomber jacket and threw it a safe distance away. I grabbed his left leg and sheared off his foot up to the heel in the lawnmower blades. At this point, I was covered in blood. The spray didn't bother me. I just wanted to spare my jacket from the blood. With Wes's left foot essentially just a heel, I repeated the same action with his right leg. He was screaming, but I still wasn't paying attention. The only thing running through my mind was if I could find another SRT-8 on Craigslist for a reasonable price. With 2 sticks for legs, I turned Wes, or should I say Avion, around and grabbed him by his right forearm. He wasn't able to fight it anymore. Bastard! I sheared his fingers and hand off up to the palm. Once again, I repeated the action with the left hand. Wes now essentially had bloody poles for limbs. Before I shut down the lawn mover and let it die, I brought Wes's face to the cutter and guided his nose into the blades. The cut was actually very clean. It looked a bit like cutting a sausage with a weed whacker. Bit by bit, the nose disappeared into the spinning blades. Quick, clean cuts. Once his nose only had a few millimeters left, I took inventory of the room. The garage bay was a mess. I calmly walked over to the workbench and grabbed a Phillips head screwdriver and a box opener he happened to have. Walking back to Wes, I knelt down and cradled his head in my lap. I proceeded to skewer the Phillips head into both of his eardrums almost up the handle. I then took the box cutter, flicked it open and jammed it into his mouth. I was filleting his tongue with the expertise of a third-grade Cub Scout who tried gutting his first fish. I got up and inspected my work. Wes had no digits on any of his limbs, no nose, eardrums, or tongue. I looked around Wes's shop until I found his cell phone and went back to his dying corpse and took a selfie with a thumbs up. I then texted the photo to myself, popped out the SIM card and crushed the phone. Like I said, this all happened in April of 2020. I never really got to the bottom of what happened to the Mississippi girls. I assume it was Wes, but I can't say for sure. I only do the jobs I get paid for, and I did leave this whole ordeal with a signed Conor McGregor glove. I never heard anything else about old Wes. I actually left him alive in the bay, even though I don't think he survived much longer. If I had to guess, Wes is crawling the floors of hell deaf and mute, thinking about the time he decided to waste my time on a serial rapist. Well, there you have it, folks. I don't really feel the need to go into detail about my journey home or the aftermath of the whole ordeal. As always, I licked my wounds and got ready for the next bounty that presented itself. You all asked for another bounty, and here it is. I hope you all leave this satiated for a little while. I stated this before, and I feel like it is fitting to do so again. You can feel free to commit horrible acts on people. Many people in this world are rapists, murderers, etc. Do whatever the hell it is that you want, but just make damn sure that you do not end up on my bounty list. Until next time, Vila Pechora, author of this amazing story. My story begins a few years ago. I decided to use my computer skills to run a small darknet forum, mainly just to share information without censorship. At first I was extremely paranoid about my site getting hacked and having my anonymity being compromised, so I went online and began to research everything that I would need to ensure my own safety. After countless days of scouring blogs, forums, and other material, I decided I was ready now. I didn't have any money, so I couldn't just buy a VPS and host the site offshore or whatever. So I decided to use my old laptop. After all, I wasn't planning on running a major website. So after setting the server up and what I thought was literally every single thing I could to do, harden it against attack, I put the site online. Everything went great for a couple of months. Donations rolled in as the user base grew larger and larger. After around 5 months, the user base had gotten so big, I had to upgrade and migrate everything to a new PC, which I built just to host the forum, and from there, everything seemed perfect. The site was running smoothly, and there were no issues with the migration until one day when I came home and noticed the PC had frozen. I didn't think much to it. Maybe just a software bug caused it. So I rebooted. And that's when it was clear to me something was wrong. The PC lit up and beeped a few times, then shut off, so I thought to myself, okay, so it's a hardware issue. After a few hours trying to diagnose the issue, I figured it out, and it turned out the RAM had been corrupted. I took it back to the store since it was still under warranty. The customer rep just told me it might have just been a faulty stick. When I got home, I replaced the stick of RAM and had the site back up and running within a few hours. Everything seemed to be perfect again. I apologized to the users for the downtime, and everyone seemed to be happy enough. Fast forward a few more months. The forum's been up and running for around a year and a half now. This is when things started to get really weird. I finished work on a Friday. It was a gorgeous day in the middle of summer. I came home, had something to eat, and sat down in front of my PC and noticed I had a message. Upon opening the message, I realized that somewhere I'd messed up now. Don't get me wrong. I'm not like Assange or anything, so I don't really know why anybody would actually target me. But the world is a crazy place, so whatever. The message had my details from my name, address, details, password, private emails, private messages, everything from nearly every single device I owned. I freaked out and immediately took the PC offline, turned my internet off. But little did I know that this guy had done his research. A couple of hours pacing my room, I received a text message. I know everything about you. The message was sent via some type of SMS service, so there was no way to trace it, and then my phone rang. Don't talk, just listen. I know everything there is to know about you. All I want is 2 Bitcoin or things get worse. I'll send you a text with the wallet details. The phone call ended just as quickly as it started. I opened my laptop up and checked my Bitcoin wallet. There was enough left over from the donations just to pay this guy off and hope that would be the end of it. So I entered the guy's details and sent the payment. My phone rang again. Thank you for complying. Unfortunately, someone I know really likes you. He hung up, panicking. I tried calling the number back. An automated message began to play. The number you have dialed has not been recognized. A few hours passed and I began to think to myself, well, maybe the last call was just him having fun, and decided after a long day I'd just go to bed. Sometime around 2 a.m. I was woken up by the sound of banging at my front door. I jumped out of bed and turned on all the lights, grabbing a knife from the kitchen. I walked slowly towards the window and looked out. I could see someone standing by a car when they spotted me. They got in and drove off. I rushed to the door in hopes I might be able to get a license plate. But by the time I'd opened it, they'd already turned the corner. As I turned, noticed an envelope on the floor. I picked it up, went back inside and locked the door, closed the curtains and sat in the kitchen. I placed the envelope on the counter and stared at it for around half an hour, trying to muster up the courage to open it. Did these guys really come to my home? I thought to myself. After the half hour was up, I decided enough was enough. I opened the envelope and pictures fell out onto the counter. They were of me sleeping. These guys had not only been outside my house, they'd been inside whilst I was sleeping. The images had been edited and strange love hearts had been added next to me. So now I was sufficiently freaked out. I didn't go back to sleep, and when the sun broke the darkness, I decided to head to the police station and tell them everything. I hadn't broken any laws, so I hoped they would just help me, at least after hours of explaining everything to them. They told me there was nothing they could do. At this point, I had never felt so alone in the world. I was scared of what this guy was planning for me. I didn't have the foggiest idea what I was supposed to do or expect, so I decided to wipe everything: my laptop, PC and phone. I picked up everything I needed, stuffed it all into a bag, and decided to leave. I had a couple of friends that I knew I could rely on, so I called up my old buddy Marcus, and we met, had a few beers, and I explained everything to him. He offered me a place to stay, and I hoped that would be the end of it. How wrong I was. A few days later it happened again. There was a knock at the door first thing in the morning. Me and Marcus both went out to find another envelope on the floor. Same thing, pictures of me sleeping, but these were in Marcus's house. I started freaking out again, and Marcus just said, "Okay, well, we need to do something, maybe set a trap or something." So we went over numerous ideas, everything you could think of, from cameras to baiting him. and we settled on the idea of staying up during the night and locking him in the room. We filled the bed up with pillows, set up cameras, and even barred the windows in the room. We hid in the room next door after a few hours had passed. We heard the lock rattling on the front door, and we knew it was game time. We'd left the door just slightly ajar so we could see outside as he went past, and the moment he went into the room, we both sprung to action quickly as we could. We closed the door and locked it from outside using a chair and a metal bar. There was only one way he was getting out, and he'd have to destroy the door. We could see the silhouette of him as he paced the room. Quietly, it was creepy as fuck. We called the police as we kept an eye on him. At last, I thought I could finish this and move on with my life. Just as the police arrived, we noticed the guy take a gun out and place it to his head. He held a sign up which read, "I love you," and he pulled the trigger. The police barged in, guns drawn, told us both to get the floor. We complied and shouted, "He's in there," pointing at the door. The police removed the makeshift lock and entered the room, called for an ambulance, and put me and Marcus in the back of a police car. I'd been sat in the interview room for a good couple of hours, I guess, whilst they carried out the investigation, when a detective came in and said, down in front of me, opening a folder and placing pictures on the table, "Do you know her?" "Her?" I said, looking at the pictures. "No," I replied, confused. He looked at me and said, "This is the person who's been stalking you." And he then began to tell me they had visited her home and found a shrine with photos of me all over the place, from restaurants to the gym, even shopping. He went on to tell me that she'd been the one that sent the messages, made the phone calls, etc. And they'd also found a diary, which had some kind of future plans for me and her. She wanted me to be her husband, and we'd been chatting for around a year and a half. From the moment I started the forum, after I explained everything, the detective said I was lucky to be alive. She had actually planned to drug me and kidnap me. She'd even made some makeshift lock bed so I wouldn't be able to escape. To this day, I feel lucky, and I haven't been on the dark web since. I have a very disturbing story to tell you. In the past, I had made a hobby of posting deep web mystery box openings on my web channel. I now refuse to ever do them again. Mind you, I know that some of these box openings are faked. I can assure you mine was definitely not. If you don't already know what a mystery box is, I'll clue you in. It is simply a box that you purchase with Bitcoin that someone stuffs with God knows what. You get the pleasure of being creeped out by opening it. You never know what will be inside. That's the beauty of it, if you want to call it that. A few places online have them, but if you play on the dark web, there are no rules. I have received broken dolls, old pictures of family members with fake blood smeared around them, hopefully fake blood, stuffed animals, ripped woman's lingerie, medical supplies, tarot cards, a rat skull. Anything scary, silly, or macabre goes. The scary thing is you don't know who is sending you the box or what's inside, so you better have a damn good pair of gloves. A really thick pair. One time I made the mistake by reaching my hand into my first mystery box and getting a sticky glue-like substance all over my arm. What a mess. It had leaked out of a bottle. I still don't know what the hell it was, but it didn't have a smell. I washed my hands pretty good after that. Hopefully nothing harmful. I will not to reveal the exact website on the dark web I was purchasing my boxes from, but they have taken it down since this incident. I can only reveal that many people were bidding on this one particular box. It had to be good, so I thought. So I took the chance, hoping to get something interesting. I was almost outbidded by one user, but I fought to the finish. This baby was officially mine. "Yes," I exclaimed as I verified my address, feeling satisfied. I only used my post office box for safety reasons. Rule number 1. Never ever use your home address. It's not safe. There are crazy people out there. It took at least 3 weeks for the box to arrive, and I was super stoked to pick it up. It was a medium-sized, normal-looking cardboard box sealed tightly with packing tape. Not very heavy, and it felt pretty light. I had hoped I didn't get screwed, but I was curious to why this box had cost so much and why everyone wanted it. Soon I would find out. When I arrived home that Friday evening, I set up my webcam and something made me hesitate. I had a weird feeling about this particular box. Maybe my intuition was trying to tell me something. Instead, I ignored it, grabbed my big metal scissors and set my area up. I always put a garbage bag or sheet down on my kitchen table before unboxing because no telling where the hell the box came from, or what might leak out. I slipped on my thick rubber gloves, observing them for any leaks or holes. I was good to go. Flipping on the webcam, I began my video. It's time for another unboxing, folks. This is the big one you've been waiting for, and I hope you get a thrill out of this as much as I do. I have been waiting for this box for 3 weeks. It is finally here. It's not very heavy, as you can see. I wonder what's inside. I make sure to shake the box for the camera to show the lightness. I began to cut the tape with my big blue scissors and anticipated what could be inside. I carefully opened the cardboard flaps and see shredded newspaper. Little bitty bits of newspaper that someone personally looked to have hand tore into shreds. Riffling through, I dig deeper to the bottom and feel something squishy. I pull it out. It is a squared-looking black garbage bag sealed with gray duct tape. Something is wrapped inside, but an odd smell is coming from the garbage bag. A slight rotten odor permeates the air and I gag. I hope this isn't something gross. Obviously it is. I nearly forget I am on camera. I began to sweat and something makes me very uncomfortable. But I keep going with my video. I pull up on the tape and open the garbage bag carefully, trying to not damage the goods inside. I reveal a big white sealed Ziploc bag with a blue and white looking plaid material inside that looks to be a shirt. I smell the smell again, and this time it's even worse. My natural reflex kicks in and the bag hits the floor. I gag. Yuck! A sweet, odorous smell fills my nostrils. You know the kind when a rat dies in the wall and decomposition takes place. The smell lingers for weeks. Sort of like that smell. But this was 10 times worse. I pick up the bag again and force myself to continue. Written on the Ziploc bag in black marker are the words, "Smell of Death," in all capital letters. What the hell? I stop the camera and realize maybe I shouldn't put this on video. If there is something really gross in here or criminal, I don't need to be putting it on camera for the world to see. In the back of my mind, I've always known the possibility of playing games with strangers. Some can turn out to be psycho. It's a risk you take playing the mystery box game. I quickly hurl the Ziploc bag out the front door. The pattern of throwing the bag around is becoming all too familiar. I spray a can of Lysol spray all over the room, especially on the table, figuring it's just a stupid prank. I sit down for a moment, trying to gain my composure and not be a wuss. I think back to the packages I've received over the past months. The glorious mystery boxes. None of them ever smelled like this. Deciding to brave it up, I decide I will march outside and open the bag. There must be something else in that bag other than the plaid shirt, I think to myself. I mean, I paid a good bit for this box. I go outside and walk up to the bag holding my breath. I pull open the seal and shake the shirt out of the bag. It plops to the ground, looking to be badly stained with fluids. Body fluids. Maybe I'm letting my imagination get the best of me. I see what looks to be a cassette tape wrapped in clear plastic sticking out of the front pocket. I quickly grab this with my gloves and step back. Way back. The shirt reeks. I gag and almost vomit. I try to keep a long distance between the shirt and I. I open the plastic-wrapped film around the cassette tape. I don't really enjoy touching it, not even with my gloves. Written in the same permanent marker are the words, "My friend." So whoever sent this mystery box must have taken an old-fashioned approach. I go into the garage and find my old boombox with a cassette player, praying it still works. I usually plug it up and listen to the radio while working on projects. I put the tape in. I press play. It makes a slight clicking noise. Hopefully this works. Suddenly, I hear a crackly man's voice speaking with a slight southern drawl. I hope you are happy with your mystery box. This was a rare find, and I'm so happy I get to share this with you. You see, a homeless man had died in the woods nearby my house. He was in a very desolate place where no one would look for him. I didn't report it. Instead, I became a bit curious. I probably shouldn't have, but oh well. I looked at his body each day. He must have had to been dead for over 5 days because I saw the bloody foam coming out of his mouth and nose. He smelled horrible. I think he even might have peed himself. I think that happens when you die. You lose your bodily functions. Oh, you want to know what he was wearing? He was wearing a plaid shirt, the one I sent you. He had on some old army-looking pants and had long, scraggly gray hair and a beard. I felt sorry for him, and every day I went out to talk to him. He wasn't dead to me, even though he never talked back. He was stiff to the touch. He even looked to be smiling once, like he might have heard me. I knew then he and I would be good friends. I told him my life story of growing up not having a father and my stepdad, who used to beat me with the belt, all over my body, leaving big, giant red whelps. I told him about my little brother Mikey, who had died a month after he was born. He drowned in the bathtub. Mama blamed me for it and sent me to the home for bad boys. I was just trying to give him a bath. I filled the tub up and put him in. I was 10 years old. I wanted to hit stop on the cassette tape. Was all of this for real? Am I listening to the ramblings of a demented madman? I hit play and continued to listen. I went back into the woods many days later, and I saw that his body was turning green. I took a few pictures with a Polaroid of my new friend, but did not dare to send them to you. I even took one of us together. I tried to pry open his eyes for the picture, but they were too mushy and it didn't work. I didn't want my observations to be found out. I even brought him a blanket one night because it got real cold. He looked to be getting in worse shape each day, and I knew I had to tell someone, and so I took my friend's shirt. I needed something to remember him by. My special friend. I left and told him goodbye and thanks for listening to me and being a good friend. A few days later, his body was found by local hunters and it was all over the news. I loved the way his shirt smelled. I couldn't stop smelling it, so I thought I should share it with somebody. You like the smell, I hope? Okay, well, I have to go now. Don't feel bad for taking my friend's shirt. I will probably get another one soon. Bye. I stopped the tape in disgust. It was the most morbid thing I had ever heard. I messaged one of my good friends to come over and check everything out. He was a bit surprised after listening to the tape and gave one of his buddies a call, who is a deputy in our little town. The deputy found it very disturbing and didn't think it was a joke. The man on the tape sounded sick. Unfortunately, no action could be taken because it would be impossible to find the exact location the package came from. If I discovered actual human remains in the box, then law enforcement could step in. There was no evidence of a crime committed. The strange thing was, the website was taken down not long after this happened. I stopped buying mystery boxes from the deep web after that. It was a very disturbing experience.